So there is a website. Well, it's pretty well known. I don't know how much you guys have been following silver lately. The LBMA is NASDAQ. It's a NASDAQ Commodities Regulatory Agency. Thank you. And they are saying, acknowledges buying frenzy, silver market, and silver shortage fears. And this article was dated 13th of April, so it's about a month old. I don't know if you guys have been following the silver market at all, but I don't know. You remember that GameStop thing that went on, where there's an app where people can, and they bid up the price. They saw that the Wall Street was driving down the price, and so then there's a bunch of people got on there and started buying this GameStop. And I think it's either buying it or selling it. I can't remember which one. I think it was buying it, because Wall Street was driving, the hedge funds were driving it down. And they lost, like, the hedge funds lost like about $1 billion or something like that because of it. Well, those same people saw that they were rigging the silver market, and so they started buying silver and taking possession of it. And that happened. I'm not sure when that happened, but this article is published in about a month ago. I can tell you when that happened, I woke up. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I went and I checked. I thought, well, maybe I should buy some silver, and so I went on to some silver coin dealers website, because I buy silver from coin dealers. You have to be careful. There's a lot of counterfeit silver out there, and we'll talk about why I don't buy much bullion, okay? Oh, and this here is a silver maple leaf. This is a Canadian silver coin. It has a face value of $5. Anyways, so I don't buy much bullion. Now that is considered money in Canada. The reason I buy money, like silver eagles, someone actually donated these Morgans to me, but I'll buy bullion if I know who I'm getting it from. And the Republic of Texas, I know those guys, and so they get it. Actually, they get it from the mint. They have them. They own the dies, and they buy it from the mint, and so I'm very familiar with. So I make sure it's real silver, and I buy coin dealers and money, real money. Okay, like the dimes, the silver eagles, the Morgans. Those are money, and the Canadian maple leaf. And the reason you buy them as that's the money is because if they counterfeit it, then the Secret Service hunts those people down and puts them in jail for 30 years. And if it's bullion, then, now I'm not sure about Canadian maple leafs. I'm sure in Canada they have people that hunt people down for counterfeiting, but I'm not sure if the Secret Service would hunt them down for having counterfeit maple leafs. I'm not sure about that. But I also buy from coin dealers. I'm very careful about who I buy. If I buy it on eBay, and I haven't bought it lately because eBay wants to know too much information. They're starting to want to know too much information from people. So I'll go to what happened is I went to I started looking, and on the places where I had been buying silver, it wasn't available, okay, at coin dealers. Like there's one in Dallas. What's the name of that one? I can't remember the name, but and there's some other ones like in California that I buy. I would buy it on eBay previously, and so I knew the coin dealer it was coming from, DBS Coins, and they're in Southern California, and so I would just go on their website, and they didn't have it, and so I figured, well, maybe I ought to buy some silver, and so by now it's getting to be like around 8:30 in the morning, right, just before the stores open. So what I did is I called up a coin dealer, local one, and they said, yes, we have them in stock, and this is the price. And I says, okay, I'll be down a little bit to get some. Friend of mine, I called up a friend of mine, told him about that, and he decided he wanted to come along. And so we both went to this coin dealer. When we got there, this is like within a half an hour of it opening in the morning, there was a lineup of people in front of us, and I bought, well, between the two of us, I think we bought, it was 700 and change, 750, something like that. I can't remember exactly. I think they told me 725, and then the price, or they told me 740, and the price went down a little bit. I think it was around 725 for a roll of eagles. And I think between the two of us, we bought, you know, about 10 rolls. And so, and it was all cash. We took cash there. And so then, and there was a line of people behind us. And the people at the coin dealer said that I asked them about junk silver, okay, because the dimes are considered junk silver. And I asked them about junk silver, and they said we sold out on that already. That was gone on the weekend. And so then, this was a Monday. And so then what I did was, me and him started looking around. We went and I got some more cash, and he got some more cash, and we went back later that afternoon, and there was a lineup again, people buying. They still had some. I think I bought another roll or two, and then we were driving down the freeway, and it was like maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or it was before quitting time, and the parking lot was empty, and it looked like the store was closed. Maybe they sold out. I don't know. But so, and ever since then, and that was probably around the middle of April. It's been a month or so. Anyways, ever since then, I have been going to, when I get some extra cash, I'll go to a coin dealer, and I don't even shop around. I used to shop around all the time, okay? And I'd call up several coin dealers and find out who's selling it for the best price. And so now what I do is I just go to there's a couple coin dealers in Dallas that we go to, and I just go there, and they might have, like, there's this one coin dealer, there's 2 coin dealers on each side of the freeway. And so the one coin dealer, every time I've gone there, they would have like maybe 10 or 15 rolls of silver eagles in the case. They'd have a little bit of bullion. They'd have maybe a few maple leafs. And sometimes they have a little bit of junk silver, but not very much. And we talk to them, and they say, well, what if I want to get more? And they say, well, you have to order it, and we'll call you when it comes in. And so that's all it got is what's there. And so then you have to be careful, you know, because they don't want to tell you how much they have, because it's a security issue. Somebody might want to come in and rob the place, although they're pretty big on security, I'll tell you, in Texas. And they're all armed. They all have, you know, arms in there and stuff like that. And yes.
Texas is getting, I think, the constitutional carry bill is going to be sitting on Governor Abbott's desk soon for him to sign. He said he'll sign it. I hear it's already gone through the House and the Senate. So you guys are going to be constitutional carry soon.
Right. Yeah. They don't. It's going to get to the point they don't care about concealed carry or anything.
Well, under constitutional carry they will not, but they do now.
Right.
You have to actually go get a concealed carry permit. Do that.
Right.
But as soon as it's constitutional carry, you can carry it any way you want.
Right. Right.
So that's sweet.
Yeah, you have in the stores, you'll see their signs saying, well, right now, unless you have a concealed carry permit, you can't have guns in the store, that kind of stuff. And you see people now. You're seeing more and more people with guns. And I have one. I was going to bring it with me. But then they told me that New Jersey is a little bit stupid on if you get caught with guns, and so I figured, well, I better not. Yeah. And so I left it back there. But my roommate is a guy that he's a doctor, and he got charged with practicing medicine without a license. Well, he's not a medical doctor, and he's never been a medical doctor. So the charges were completely bogus, and they actually had him in jail for a period of time. But he beat the charges, and it was all vacated. And so now he's getting ready to sue their butt off. And but he had, before it was all vacated, he's a gun collector. They went and came to his place and found like 100 and some odd guns. Like, we're talking, I mean, he's got sniper rifles, he's got all sorts of stuff. I mean, and he had some that he thought that they would charge him for because they're borderline, like automatic or something like this. You know what I mean? So what happened is they gave him all his guns back, and so he's got them. He's my roommate. He's got them all there until he gets himself situated. Because it's all fairly recent. All of that stuff went on, but he's got some nice guns. I'm telling you, he's got some good guns with scopes. He's got a bunch of them that have scopes. Matter of fact, he was taking me around. I bought it's a 308 with a match grade barrel. Matter of fact, he calls it a bench gun. Because it's got a bipod, but it's not camouflaged or anything like that. As a matter of fact, the barrel's actually chrome. Anyways, but I got to get a good deal when I was in Arizona, and so anyways, he calls it a bench gun. He says we'll have to take it out and shoot it. And he told me the best kind of ammo with 308. He says you need, I think he said 175 grain, because it carries the best, gives you the best. Trajectory it carries the best, but he says that you can actually some of these guns. He says like it's a 22-06, I think he called it, which was a 223 where it was neck down, and where it increases. What it does is you have to get special ammo for it. But there's more powder in the thing, and so then it really carries a long ways,
Very flat trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good for like maybe 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
I went to this gun show in Arizona, and they had a bunch of high school girls. They had a shooting team that was there, and they had 552. That's military. It's NATO 552, which is basically, I think it's equivalent to 223s. But they were match grade, bipods, they were all camoed. It was a shooting team, a high school shooting team. And they had actually taken on the FBI shooting team and beat them. Anyways, yeah?
Women have a lower center of gravity. They tend to be better snipers than men.
Maybe.
They actually.
So that was pretty interesting. A high school shooting team, a bunch of girls. That probably FBI shooting team probably didn't want to.
During the invasion of Germany into Russia, the female snipers were deadly on the Russian side.
Is that right? Yeah, no doubt.
Would the full faith and credit clause apply to if they pass the constitutional carry in Texas A and B, doesn't that just apply to U.S. citizens anyway?
Well, it does.
Yeah.
You're right. And and actually, this roommate of mine was telling me, this is stuff he got in jail, is that what you do if you get a gun charge is you tell them it's not a gun, it's not a firearm, it's not a weapon, and you make an affidavit and file it into the court. It's not a gun, it's not a firearm, it's not a weapon, it's an arm, and I have the right to keep and bear arms. And I know people like Kerry Zolman. He gets the IRS came to see him one day, and he had an assault rifle, and he puts it on the table, and so they're talking, and the IRS says, get that thing out of here, and he says, no, he says, that's my arm. I have the right to keep and bear arms. And the IRS left it.
Arms is plural.
Whatever, yeah, arms, or it's my arm. It's my arm, and I have the right to keep and bear arms.
Right, so you could have two.
Yeah, that's right, or more than
Or
two.
more, exactly.
That's right. So, but the way you defeat it is you file an affidavit into the case, and you say it's not a gun, it's not a weapon, it's not a firearm, but it is an arm, and I have the right to keep and bear arms, and the case will get disappeared.
Wow,
Is that as a U.S. citizen, A, and B, my next question would be, is you being a Republic of Texas senator, wouldn't a man like you have full faith and credit on any de jure state?
Well, you know, you would think, but that doesn't stop the brain dead idiots from charging them with something. That's the reason that I'm going to talk about bar members, and we're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to talk about bar grievances. Matter of fact, I got some bar grievances there that I prepared. This one here is one that I filed on a third-party debt collector, and I filed one against every member of the partners on a law firm that's a third-party debt collector, and these ones I haven't even filed yet. These ones I have to mail. These ones I prepared since I've been here, and so these ones I got to send. But I'm filing bar grievances. I'm going to start. I filed bar grievances against judges. I wanted to see what they do with it, what would happen, and now I'm thinking that, you know, really, I mean, we've gone through all this stuff. Anyways, back to the original topic here, real quick, is that if I was you, I would be buying as much silver as I can get a hold of. And the reason is that Cliff High has talked about $600 silver in his data sets. Penny Kelly is another one, and we'll probably start off the day, maybe tomorrow, with part of a Penny Kelly video. I usually like to get, you know, some conversation, something going, so that for the live stream, so that people have something on the live stream, that something's going on they can watch while there's more people showing up, you know. Anyways, and so in the past I would show maybe a Penny Kelly video or a Jim Willie video. Anyways, Penny Kelly said that she's a psychic, and she, in November of 2019, she said that there's going to be waves of change in April of 2020. Well, I'd say that was a home run, and with all this coronavirus hoax going on. Anyway, she does a look-see, and she's pretty sharp about that stuff, and she's pretty accurate, although she'll admit that human free will can come into play and change the future. And so so she doesn't usually, she'll go out like 3 months. She says that Donald Trump isn't going to show up between now and the fall. He says, but she sees him behind the scenes, and he's telling the military what to do, and they're doing it. And she said that she actually has a website, and she teaches people how to do this stuff. And she said that she had there was like 20 or 30 of them doing the same thing, and they all came up with the same thing, that Trump is behind the scenes, and the military's doing what he tells them to do. And so he's really the president. I don't know if you saw the recent stuff with all of the election fraud that's coming out in Arizona. And so anyways, Penny Kelly said that she saw silver popping to $800 an ounce for a couple days, and then it's going to come down to $600 an ounce. Now she said that was going to happen like in April, and since then she says that they're rigging it like mad. She says she feels it's like trembling. It wants to go, but they're keeping it down. And so she says as long as we have until about 90% of these, cabal are taken out, she said it's not going to move. And but that's essentially what it wants to do. So, and then with all these shortages, if I was you, I'm buying as much silver as I can get a hold of, because when it pops, if it goes to 500, that's another thing. Jim Willie says that one of his contacts in the European banks, he says he has a contact over the European banks, and this is like one of the board of directors or executive officers or something like this. He said that he goes to these meetings, these EU meetings in Europe, and they figure that the what do they call it? The equilibrium called it equilibrium price of silver should be around $500 an ounce. Okay, so that's 3 separate unrelated sources that it's coming from. So anyways, if I'm buying as much silver as I can afford, and I would recommend, and this is online too, I'd recommend anybody to be doing the same thing. There's shortages, and I've heard that there's 1,000-ounce bars that which is 1,000 ounces is 12 ounces to a pound, a troy pound. So then 1,000-ounce bars is like about 80 pounds, I guess. And so there used to be a bunch of 1,000-ounce bars that the dealers would trade amongst each other, and those are all gone now. Elon Musk had to buy, I don't know how many, it was like $1 billion worth or something like that. He had to buy a bunch of silver because he saw, I think it's because, I don't know, I can't prove anything, but he did buy a bunch of silver, and his batteries in these electric cars use silver, a lot of silver. And so he probably saw what was going on, and if he can't get silver, then he's out of business. You see what I'm saying? And so there's things like this going on that most people don't see. And Cliff High said that recently, that the normies, he calls them the normies, he says one of these days the normies are going to wake up and they say, oh, silver's something to have, so I think I'll go get some silver, and they won't be able to get it. And then he said he saw the silver dealers saying, whipping their employees, get silver, get silver. Yeah, and Cliff High only does short-term data sets, like a month or two ahead. He says after that, because of all the censorship, it's unreliable. He says, but the short-term, is fine. Anyways, so back to the topic of, we were talking about guns, and yeah, I got sidetracked a little bit with the guns. I can't remember exactly where we were on the guns.
You were talking about constitutional
Go
carry.
on the guns, how do you know if it's counterfeit or real? Like, what is the
Silver.
What do you have to look?
That's why it's people like you and me. That's why I buy strictly from dealers.
Okay.
If it was on eBay, I'd want to see, like on eBay they have the feedback score, right? I'd want to see a feedback score of like 100,000 or something like that. In other words, he sold a lot of silver, and they'll bend over backwards for you if there's ever a problem, anyways. But I can tell you, the silver dealers check it. Okay. I went to the silver dealer in Texas, and because we went and got some 10-ounce bars, and we didn't know, we got them from someone we knew, but and we didn't know if it was real silver, and he didn't know, and so he guaranteed that if it wasn't, that he would buy them back. And so we took them to a silver dealer, and he had this machine. I think it uses eddy current. I don't know if you're familiar with eddy current. These on the freeways, where they have the weigh scales and they have these things over top of the road, and it's looking for trucks, right? That uses eddy current. I know about it because I've done aerospace engineering consulting. They use eddy current to check for cracks in airplane structure and stuff like that. And eddy current, what it does is it sets up an electrical current, a little electrical current, and when something metal comes nearby, it creates a pulse. And that's about it. Okay, so then if you find an edge of a part, like a crack would be considered an edge, right? And you move the probe over the crack, it'll send a little pulse, so you know you've got a crack there. And the same principle, when a truck moves under the sensor on the freeway, then it picks up the metal, creates a momentary electrical pulse, and they can tell there's a truck going by because they're up high, that kind of thing. And the cars are too far away for the sensor to pick up the car. You see what I'm saying? So anyways, they have machines that can tell you whether it's pure silver or not, and most of the coin dealers now, like with the Silver Eagles, they're all going to be brand new unless somebody turned them in, sold some silver. But I think these are 2021s here. So I buy, that's why I buy silver dealers, because, and then I also buy the Eagles. And the I buy junk silver sometimes, but I've been sticking mostly to Eagles lately.
The Eagles at who's manufacturing the silver eagle? Who's issuing it? The Congress, the real Congress?
That's the U.S. Mint. This is 2014, so it's not brand new.
The U.S. Mint.
U.S. Mint.
Is the U.S. Mint a private corporation?
Well, that's a good question, but it's considered money. I mean, it's as good, it's better than any Federal Reserve note. You know, it's considered money. It has a face value on the silver eagles of $1. So that's lawful money, $1.
Right, lawful money. Now, is that lawful money, is that, rhetorically, is it a capital L, capital M?
Who knows? Well, I think it's all block capital letters on the silver
I'm
eagle.
referring to the term, lawful money.
Oh.
So when we go through our questions later.
I would say capital L, capital M, lawful money, it's a title. I would say it's a title for sure.
Okay, because I want to see that would be in the Constitution, right?
Yeah, Article 1, Section 10,
110.1,
110.1.
Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1.
Right.
So that'll be my rhetorical question is because when I start using that term, I want to know the constitutional way that it's written.
I don't
Right.
think,
Under the, what?
I don't think the term lawful money is used. They just say nothing, a state may not make
Anything but gold or
but
silver
gold or
coin.
silver coin. I don't know.
A
how
tender and a
you-
payment of a
and
debt.
Payment of debt, yeah.
Okay.
There's no mention of
Because I've heard lawful money quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to know, A, what the lawful definition is of lawful money.
Right.
Silver, gold.
And also, right, is it just silver and gold? Actually, there was a time I thought the coinage acts went ahead and said copper as well.
Well, yeah.
Because gold and silver coin is payment of debt of state debts, right?
Well, no state shall make anything but gold or silver coin a tender and a payment of debt. But it also says that no state shall emit bills of credit. And Federal Reserve notes are actually bills of credit. And I think that's why they got the private company to do it, because then it
Well,
wasn't
says
state.
No state. It's no
Right.
state. The state, they wanted a national currency for evenness of, because I believe in the Articles of Confederation problem, a lot of the states were able to print and determine the value
Well, there was, it's
of their own money that they were backing.
back in the 1700s, there was a continental dollar, and it inflated away into nothing. Matter of fact, there's sayings about it's worth a continental. You know, remember that? And you know, so this is not the first time that we've gone through this. Although the banksters have fine-tuned their expertise to the point now that they've manipulated things for a long time. But the bottom line is that it's
I believe that it was a strategy to eventually, they had to disconnect the money from the gold and silver supply because gold and silver takes real effort to mine and so forth. So with the dollars you misprint them, and the whole deal was to eventually turn this dollar into the world standard currency.
Of course, yeah.
And then, so that
Then they can
pay
control the
for
whole world.
wars and
Right.
buy all the politicians
Right.
and lawyers and all that.
over the
kind of
whole
stuff.
planet.
Exactly. That's exactly now.
Well,
it's
that's-
coming to a culmination now.
And that's in my videos. I've got in my PowerPoint presentations that Archbishop of the Roman cult said that in 1905 that within 20 years the United States is going to rule the world. And that's what's essentially happening or happened, and they did it through the
Money.
commercial paper, the banksters,
Yeah.
and that's why that any country wants to move away. Well, now Russia's said they're going to move away, and Russia's going to be a tough one to go after, and I don't think Russia is actually, those guys are smart. The Russians are pretty brilliant, and so they I think that they're picking this time because they know that Trump is probably the real one that's in power, number one, and number two, Biden's a wimp. You know what I mean? And he's not all there, anyways. You know what I mean? Anyways, I don't know. That's my guess, but you know, they're pretty astute. You know, the Russians are pretty astute. So, anyways, I would recommend anybody buy silver. It's going to be. I'm waiting for it to pop, and I'm telling you, I'm going to buy myself a Class A motorhome. Is what I'm going to buy. and I already have some land. I'm going to go out to that land, and I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to start building a refuge. You know, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, over the next couple days, because we all need to be looking at that. You know, with this shedding and all the rest of this stuff, you know, all of this is rumors, but you don't know how much is true and how much isn't, and you know, we all got to be thinking about, you know, an escape plan if necessary, you know, and you know, that's all I'm saying. You know, they even say I'm getting stuff saying that if you're a prepper, that they're going to come in and seize all your storage. You know what I mean? And well, they might in the cities, but if you're out in the country somewhere, you know, you're not going to have any trouble. And again, you know, in a place like Texas or Arizona where everybody's armed, you know, they're not going to get too far if they do. And so that's why I like Texas and Arizona, quite frankly. But so again, you know, you got to pick your battles, and that's why I back to the firearms is I just didn't bring anything here because I don't want to have the potential of dealing with it, you know. I got stopped by the Maryland police, the Maryland Transportation Authority police, and they said that I was doing 89 and a 65, eh? So I was kind of just going with the traffic, you know. Anyways,
1.5 times speed limit.
they gave me a warning. I told them that I'm a protected person under international law, and I give them my Republic of Texas ID card, and they gave me a warning. They said, "Oh, that stuff don't work, but we're just giving you a warning today." And that's my Republic of Texas ID card. And they said, that stuff don't work, but we'll just give you a warning today. I says, okay, thank you.
The DOB's declined.
But and it's the warning is just doing more than 65, right? Because I know that, like, at some point they get you know, there's things like dangerous driving if you're going way over the speed limit. Now I don't know what the line is in Maryland, but anyways, so that's what they said. I was doing 89 and 65, and I said, well, you know, I didn't know I was going that fast, but I was just going the speed of the rest of the traffic. So anyways. I buy strictly from coin dealers, and I'm getting less and less bullion and more money, and so hopefully you don't get any counterfeit. If you get bullion, like for example, these are like about maybe $25 a piece, and so if it turned out it wasn't silver, my remedy is to sue them for the $75 for 3 coins that are not silver. You see what I'm saying? And so, you know, that's why I buy money, because the penalties are a lot more severe. And so.
Would you add anything now to this card? You know, new information that you.
No, I don't.
Like,
actually,
meaning if you had a way to add anything to the design of the information.
that's I don't have any input into that.
No, I'm saying
That's-
if you were to make your own.
I have one of
Oh,
Sue's cards.
oh, there you go. Those are good. Those are good. She's a pretty sharp lady. And,
This quote's international law.
yeah. Yes, it does.
They're not under-
Well, the cops are.
Okay.
And,
Is it in the group also?
if you
I
go
got
to
information from the group.
right there,
I have to get
Did I
them.
get it?
I was in contact with them, but then I never
Yeah.
finalized it.
Yeah, well, this is one of
This,
hers.
okay. And it worked.
Susan Prosper or something.
Yeah.
I forget.
I give them that as well.
Okay.
I give them that as well.
You know, like the next generation Republic of Texas.
So when you get pulled over, you pull that.
Let's see. Have I actually did, I had an incident, I did present this, and they kept trying to press me for my,
Years
date of
ago.
birth.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't know when I was born. You know when you were born? So you're an exceptional baby. You can recount and tell time when you came out. I mean, hey.
I have no first-hand knowledge of that.
Yeah, how about that?
I like that.
We have to be willing to.
I don't know.
We have to- Let me see your. I just sent to the group earlier this morning my, actually I didn't include that, I'm sorry. I spoke before city council the other day to educate them. I've been talking to them for months now. I give 5 minutes twice a month to speak to them. And the idea is to educate because they're the executive branch mainly with the mayor and the city solicitor and the police chief. They're the executive branch. So I just informed them that very soon I will be traveling in a car with no plate and I will not have a license. But I have to be willing for them to take it. You know, some man or woman, mostly man, the cops, you know, they're going to be like, well, they'll radio in. You know, what are we going to do about this situation? So my plan is to have that. I do have a friend who's been traveling with no problems with tags he made up on his own. He didn't register his car.
Is that in New Jersey?
New York.
Oh, New York.
He was up in southern, New York, something like that, up on Long Island.
Oh, okay.
And he was traveling with no problems, and now he's somewhere else. But he went ahead and proceeded, and that so far there's been no one who has bothered him.
Good.
The law enforcement will come up behind him, look, and decide, well, there's nothing they can run, you know, because it's not registered anywhere. So the fact he did that in New York State was impressive to me.
Yeah, no joke.
I know how rough they can be.
Right.
No plate, nothing,
No, he had a plate,
no plate.
and he wrote diplomat on the bottom of it. And he just made up, I think, maybe if they get his permission, I'll send a copy of it. But my plan is with Chong's input, he came up with the idea. Is it okay to talk about this?
That's fine, go ahead.
The statute as well.
Yeah, why don't we read,
Statute is
why
not
don't we
critical.
read, why don't we read it?
39.
39
I can search for it.
-1.
Yeah, let's
It
do
is
that.
the most clearly written statute regarding motor vehicles of any of the states. The second best that I know of is California. They've obscured California's in 2 sentences. They describe what one is in sentence 1, and then in sentence 2 it says, well, this is not that. But you're supposed to have enough forethought and to take what you read in 2 and go back to 1 and realize what they're saying. And with New Jersey, what they've done is they've put a bunch of
Here it is, right here.
yeah, they've obfuscated it with like some weird words and so forth, but you have to actually take away to see what it says.
So we'll go over it, but Mike, go down just a
I mean,
little, go down a little.
Can you blow it up some? Would you like me to get up there and actually point it out and show
Yeah,
it?
when it-
Yeah.
okay.
Decipher.
So my plan is, with Chong's input, he was brilliant,
Let
we're
me-
gonna actually put, on my plate, it will say,
39:3.
New Jersey statutes annotated, NJSA,
Mhm.
and it'll have title 39, colon 3-1, and then what's in bold there, certain vehicles accepted from chapter. Because they're using the chapter to write us a ticket, to demand a license. So the question is, am I in a car that's accepted from the chapter?
That's actually very good.
Right. Yeah. So that's gonna be what's on my plate. I'm not making up my, I'm gonna tell them their law if they have any questions.
Well, and so then you put in the Constitution, full faith and credit. This applies in every
Are you
state in
ready?
the union. Because I'm from New
Okay.
Jersey.
Right,
What
so
they've
let's
done-
go over, let Sean go over it, read it, and read the whole thing first, and then make your comments on it. Just read the whole
Hey.
thing.
It's full of a bunch of obfuscation and just weird words that we don't even speak like this. Look at this.
But read
First
the
of
whole-
all,
read the whole
okay, 39:3-1, certain vehicles accepted from chapter. That right there is a dead giveaway. Accepted from chapter? What's accepted from chapter? By the way, the chapter is chapter 39, which for New
Right.
Jersey
That's
is
the whole
is motor
transportation
vehicle.
code. Oh, the
Well,
motor
it's a motor
vehicle.
vehicle code.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So that's what they call it. So what vehicles do you know go down the road that are accepted from the chapter? Even the police cars have tags and inspection stickers and everything. But obviously they're saying something is accepted. You reduce it, you blow it back up.
Oh,
You blow it
sorry.
back up. I need to read it.
Sorry.
So while he's.
Okay, so here we go. Now notice how they worded this. It's total obfuscation. Automobile fire engines. What is that? Okay? And such self-propelling vehicles as are used neither for the conveyance of persons for hire, pleasure, or business, nor for the transportation of freight, such as steam road rollers. What is a steam road roller? Is that the thing where they're putting down the asphalt? I guess. I don't know. And traction engines. Traction engine? So, you see, they've written this in a way to try to deceive and obfuscate and mislead you and misdirect. So what you have to do is you have to actually take out certain parts of it. First of all, you have to understand that the transportation code applies to commerce. You're either hauling persons or freight for a hire. You're making money on the road. If you're not making money on the road, you're just going about your business, going to the grocery store, taking your children to school. You're not in commercial activity, okay? So what you actually need to see is as are used neither for the conveyance of persons for hire, nor for transportation of freights, are accepted from the provisions of this chapter. If you just highlight those words or underline them or whatever, you'll see the truth of what is actually being said. And this way it actually complies with 18 U.S.C. 31 A6 and A10, where A6 gives the definition of what a motor vehicle is. It says it's used for commercial purposes or uses. And then you go to A10 and it describes what commercial purpose is. This is of all the state statutes that I'm aware of, this one is the most clear. You just have to take words away. The second one is California's. If you go look at California 260 of the Motor Vehicle Code, it gives a definition there. And you'll see that there's only 2 lines you have to do a little mental gymnastics, dissect to get to where it jives with 18 U.S.C. 31 A6 and A10. The rest of the codes, I mean, it's all hidden within the definitions and everything. It's a much more difficult to take it apart. But
Yeah.
it's there.
They try and make it confusing as
Yeah.
possible because they don't want to let their slaves go.
Yep.
Anyways,
So I alerted the city council, and the chief of police happened to be on the dais at the meeting. And I basically gave them the first notice on the record because the city council meetings are official proceedings. The minute they hit the gavel, it's an official proceeding under their rules. So I noticed that I'm going to be basically using this in your town to trap. And I said I better not be basically harassed or bothered. And so I'm going to notice them 3 times, and then I'm going to go ahead and roll the car out onto the road. And I'm going to go down to the police station and have an officer come out with his video and video me talking, and we're going to go over it all. So it's all on the record. So that's my plan.
Tell him about how, and on the tag, he's gonna put the statute 39:3-1. How's that for notice?
It really was brilliant. That was Thomas.
That's gonna be too much.
So, I mean, the regular tags will work fine. My friend Glenn's tags from Texas, they all work fine. But in my case, because I know New Jersey's so mean,
That's
I'll be able to have my car in a second, unless I make it abundantly clear. But once I make it abundantly clear, they're notoriously noticed. And I'm going to have the video as well.
And that would prevent them from taking the vehicle.
Well, no, that won't prevent, nothing's going to prevent them from taking it. If they want to take it, they're going to take it. But then there's the contract aspect.
Well, and it's laying a foundation so you can sue them.
Right, so if they take it, there's all sorts of, and if we have a contract on the record of, if you take it, here's what you must pay me, then they're noticed. And I'll notice the Attorney General of the state. He's the, and the governor, who's the top law enforcement. Basically, the two of them work together. So, basically, I'll have all that information available, so even if I'm not with my car, whoever is looking at it is going to have to say, well, I'm not ordering this thing taken or towed because it's not registered and so
Accepted from this chapter.
right, it's going to say, they're going to look it up. They might not even know it themselves.
They probably don't.
They're going to say to the desk sergeant, what does this mean? Okay, well, he's accepted. Leave him alone, and that's all I'm hoping.
He's gonna look it up and read it.
So, I just wanted to share that. That's
I
my.
like that.
Yeah, well, the police chief was there that night
And the chief
also.
of police was there.
He was there, so he's already been noticed in person.
So I just need to put on the record what they're gonna have to pay me if they do. If I come back and my car is gone.
They finagle with your rights.
And it's a constitutional issue, which goes to official deprivation. Could you pull up
18 U.S.C.
No,
241?
no.
18 U.S.C.
New Jersey 30, 2C30.
2C30?
I think it's -1.
That's a criminal.
Right.
criminal
Because
code.
the officer will be committing a 1-year minimum felony by taking and you'll see why in a second. And this is all related
2C?
to 2C30, official deprivation of civil rights. Now, I've always avoided the word civil rights because I thought it put me in the 14th Amendment citizen category.
They do
But the
these-
way
30-1? There's no 30-1.
Try 6.
Oh, there we go.
Crime. A public servant,
crime
which
of
is
official deprivation of civil rights. Yeah, they usually word it to where it means anyone, not just.
No, this doesn't. It has to be a public servant.
No, I'm talking about as to who it applies to. It doesn't, not just U.S. citizens, but it doesn't matter what your political status is. They're supposed to honor everyone's political
Right, in other words,
status.
if it's an illegal alien, they're not supposed, a public servant can't step on these, what this says here. So this is the state, which I was thankful actually to discover this, because I didn't even realize until about a month or two ago what this says and how it helps my cases that I'm already involved in.
Yeah, really.
And the way this came about was because in Ocean City, about 2 months ago or a month ago, there was a bunch of 15-year-olds riding around on bicycles playing chicken with old people driving down the road trying to like head on, and they would make them, the old people would come to a screeching halt, and they were just harassing like a gang. And so everyone said, what are we going to do about this? And because the police have bothered youth, bullied them, violated their rights, the state attorney general put out a notice from his end telling all police chiefs in the state recently, a month, 2, 3 months ago, you're not allowed to bother any juvenile, and that's why these juveniles learned that, and now they're like, the cops can't touch me. So they're going around town in packs of 20 or 30 bicycles, basically tormenting these poor old people who are driving around. But they can't do anything. So the mayor brought and the council brought the police chief in to discuss it. And what he said a month ago, Glenn, at the meeting, he says, well, we can use Title 39, meaning the motor vehicle code.
Right.
Yeah.
To write them a ticket or whatever, but I don't even think they can because of what the official declaration
If the
said.
kids are on bicycles, how can they use the motor vehicle code?
Well, they're trying to figure out how. So read that, if you would please, because there might be statutes in other people's states that you can know. So this is what the Attorney General threatened all officers with this if they bother the kids. So once I learned about that, I'm like, okay, let me look that up and find out maybe I can use it. And it talks about B, I think, impeding or impairing.
Says public servant acting or purporting to act in an official capacity commits the crime of official deprivation of civil rights if, knowing that his conduct is unlawful and acting with the purpose to intimidate or discriminate against an individual or group of individuals because of race, color, religion, gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. So it's got to be one of those.
Right? But
The
then
public
later it
servant
says, right?
Subjects another to unlawful arrest or detention, including but not limited to motor vehicle investigative stops, search, seizure, dispossession, assessment, lien, or other infringement of personal or property rights, or 2, denies or impedes another in the lawful exercise or enjoyment of any right, privilege, power, or immunity.
Right. B is the key for me.
Motor vehicle.
No, so it says B.
Yeah, but it says acting for the purpose to intimidate or discriminate against an individual or group because of race, color, religion, gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. So you got to bring that in there somehow.
No, I don't think so, because go to B. What does B say?
B. Okay. Except as provided in paragraphs 2 and 3 of this subsection, a public servant who violates the provision of subsection A of this section is guilty of a crime of the 3rd degree.
Maybe I didn't want to. I need to look it up because I can't see it.
Except as provided in paragraphs 2 and 3.
The part about the not impeding and is what I'm...
Oh, here's 2 and 3. Well, if bodily injury results,
Right, keep going.
and then 3, if the course of violating the provisions of this section, a public servant commits or attempts to conspires to commit murder, manslaughter, kidnapping, or aggravated assault.
Well, first of all,
Doesn't it say somewhere impede or...
It does. Paragraph 2.
Read paragraph 2 and then that's what I'm claiming is...
2, yeah, but it's still tied to discrimination or intimidation based on race, color, religion, gender. I mean, yours is religion.
Yeah, but even just religion is...
Gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. It's got to be one of those.
well, first of all, they have to prove that they have a right to act upon you under Chapter 39.
Correct.
They have to get past that first before you can get there. And the very fact that if they act against you, I don't care what all those other things say, they're depriving you of a right to travel.
Exactly. That was where I was at. The right to travel on a bicycle
Yeah,
for the kid, for
Yeah.
anyone.
anybody. If you're not in commerce, Chapter 39 doesn't apply.
So then if I'm in my...
What are they
Or-
doing? Taking
Yeah,
your-
but under their codes, which crimes can you go after them for? Because that's really the solution, is to go after them for a crime.
This is the crime. It's a deprivation.
Well, but they're saying that it only, because again, remember, this is all martial law, so if it ain't in writing, then it's nothing. And they're saying that says public servant acting or reporting to act in an official capacity commits the crime of official deprivation of civil rights if, and these are the conditions, is knowing that his conduct is unlawful and acting for the purpose to incriminate or discriminate against an individual or a group of individuals because of race, color, religion, gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. It's got to be. There's got to be something in
Yeah,
there about that.
But I don't think so, because after the word property, personal, other infringement of personal or property rights, semicolon, or, it doesn't say, it's not inclusive, it create number 2 there, denies a public servant acting or purporting to act in official capacity.
Yeah, but both of those are subject to race, color, religion.
I don't think so. Denies or impedes another. You're saying, okay, race, color, religion. It has to be,
Yeah, I think so.
okay. Well, I know I have it on my church situation, that's not a problem, but I'm speaking just generally in the right to travel.
You got to show that what they did was related to one of those.
So the question is, what is someone's religion? You could tell him it's my religion, meaning
I have a religion to be free.
exactly. And
My
it's ba-
religion says that-
the anointing's
and
hitting
it's-
me.
and the
Glenn,
religion-
the anointing's hitting me. Go ahead.
Any religion is a sincerely held
Held
belief.
belief.
That's right.
And my religion is to freely travel. And you now, officer,
Yeah, right.
and 1
And
year.
I'm
in-
not carrying passengers or property for hire.
Exactly. 1 year in jail if you don't leave me alone within the next 5 seconds.
You have a right
And I had a
to pursue
man.
happiness.
I had a.
Right to pursue
Life,
happiness.
liberty, and the pursuit of
My
happiness.
religion is the
Exactly.
Constitution.
Life, liberty, and pursuit of
Exactly.
happiness.
And you were able to speak on your religion, aren't you?
Somewhat.
About your religion, right?
There you go.
And it,
My religious belief.
We-
I think the Constitution was inspired by God.
it
That's part
says
of my
ordained, doesn't
religious.
it say ordained?
That's right. That's
He's
right.
ordained something.
That's right.
Well, look, they have an oath to uphold that.
That's true. That too. That too. But how do you attach a crime to it under their codes? You got to attach a crime to it under their
Because
codes.
it's religious, and if you've noticed him, that
If
you're
there's-
free to travel.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't think it's a stretch. I really don't.
I think you could do that for sure. So you got to go after them for religious. Tell them it's your religious belief.
And be
My religion is called the Constitution of the United States of America.
a part of my religion.
Part of it. Yeah. Part of it. Yeah.
Right?
Right to life,
Right.
liberty, and the pursuit
Right.
of happiness.
I think the Constitution was inspired by God, and all the protections in it are there because God wants us to have them.
So since I've understood this, I've had 2 situations. One, now I did have a license when I was pulled over with the lights going on because I was driving too slow. There was nobody in town, and the guy claims he thought I was drunk. So I was just relaxing and just moseying around town at 10 miles an hour. You know?
Getting back to that, Federal Public Law 97-280, comma 96 Statute 1211. Biblical teachings inspired concepts of civil government within our Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And whereas it's something that the Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. Those are actual wordings in that.
There you go.
Federal Public Law
Right, Congress
97-280.
passed that, right?
Yes,
Public Law
absolutely.
97.
They recognize that.
Yeah. Could you send that to me? Have you got it, that in an email or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll write it down for you.
Well, you don't have to do that, but if it's part of an email.
No,
Oh, 97. Oh, I know about that.
Yeah.
That's the public water 97-280. Pretty sure that's the water.
Oh, it's within that act as well?
No,
The
that's
water-
not the Clean Water Act.
Clean Water Act,
No,
that's not
that was 74.
Oh.
This is different. This is rich though,
Yeah.
because there's your religion.
Yep, ties it right to Judeo-Christian principles, our government.
Right,
And we're a free people,
right.
right? So if we have all this, so in my case, it wasn't actually, it was the second time I was pulled over. A young guy pulled me over. He turned around because I had an older car that doesn't need an inspection sticker, so the one that was on there was expired, so he wanted to. So I said, before I give you this license, you do
96
realize
that
you're
call.
committing a federal crime, right? He took the license, took 2 steps towards his car, turned around, and handed it back to me. Have a good day, sir. I said, thank you. I said, before I give this to you, you do realize you're committing a federal crime right now. And he did not, so I warned him. Because it was a typical harassment, right? That they're stopping us.
Well, it's assault as well with a deadly weapon.
It is.
And they're violating your the Bill of Rights, the 4th section of the Bill of Rights, because they're compelling you to be a witness against yourself.
Right.
They're not supposed to do that. They're violating their oath of office doing that right there.
But if it hadn't been for understanding Glenn with the lights and all that, like I didn't understand all that. Now when the lights go on,
Yeah, that's only supposed to be.
They're
done in
emergency lights.
the
That's
emergency
right.
lights.
So that's a felony right there.
The someone on the chat is saying you can say against my sincerely withheld with religious beliefs. My sincerely held religious beliefs.
Mhm.
And you back it up with that.
Right.
And it puts them into, we put them subject to their code by those state, by that.
Yeah,
state.
they're felony codes.
And that, because the man or woman is a public servant. So I think perhaps the state, the de facto state knows they have to protect as your citizens with what they say. They always have to give us a means of escape because they're the ones violating our rights by coming onto the land and all that. So they're like, all right, if you are able to figure us out, then you win.
We hope, we can
That's
only
what I-
hope.
Well, that's the whole idea of all those codes, right? The millions of them.
Well,
And that's why I like that what Charlie does, and that Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. It's 1 page response to anything, and you just tell them that you attach it to the citation or whatever, and take it back to the court and file it, and you just say. Constitution for the United States of America, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I am a Texas citizen, or in this case, it'd be New Jersey citizen, or New Jersey national. You don't even use the word citizen, you use
I'm
national.
Well, in my view, I'm a Pennsylvania citizen at
Okay.
birth. When I
Okay.
was born, not birth. When I was born, because I didn't realize until I read the word citizen in Bouvier's, even a baby's a citizen. I thought one had to become 21, be a male, white, voting, that kind of thing.
Right.
Not according to back then. A citizen was someone with the posterity
Right.
that was a baby.
And under the law of nations, a citizen, you have to be a citizen to have the power of government.
So I was a Pennsylvania citizen when I was born.
That's the hearsay. I was given birth in Pennsylvania, and so
I don't
therefore,
like the word birth because it talks about the shipping.
yeah,
I
that's
don't
right.
like the word birth.
Yeah.
I'm born a man, born a boy, became a man. and-
There you go. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to, this is a video about de-googling your phone. I don't know, are you guys interested in listening to this? This is pretty interesting. Rob Braxman is a computer nerd that knows how to de-google phones, and if it's of interest, it's up to you.
Take the phone and throw them in the trash anyway.
He says you can, I don't know if you can de-Google any phone, but he de-Googles phones, takes Google off your phone. They can't track you once you do that. And so it removes all the tracking. It's up to you. We can, just go ahead. I was gonna play that because I wanted to have something while people got on the live stream. Obviously, we've been talking long enough that there's definitely people on the live
How long
stream.
is the video?
It's 30 minutes.
If you want to use up the time, feel free. If you think it's valuable. Can't they just come back on? They seem to be like a leech. You know? Every time I try to avoid them, they seem to reattach themselves.
What, the phone?
Like the Google.
I don't even know, I'm not even aware of how they do it or if they are or whatever.
I mean, I'm
I'm
on.
just
I
not
use.
checking.
Well, I put Google as my search.
Yeah.
So I guess I need to put DuckDuckGo on my phone.
I'm bad
instead.
at this, I'm so lazy, I just go right to Google if I look something up, it's probably not good.
But even if they do, I mean, the fact that we know who we are is able to
Yeah.
repel them if we're not in comments.
Yeah, you know, I guess you have to pick your battles, there's no doubt. This is something that eliminates tracking. And if you're worried about tracking, you know, that's the reason that some people are concerned about that. I mean,
of many, many listeners. I've heard about it many times over the years. Variations on the question, how do I get rid of Google from my life? And it is a big question because, as I'm sure every person listening to this right now knows, Google is increasingly a part of your life. It is the big brother that is watching silently over almost every data transaction that you have one way or another. So is there a way to avoid the big G altogether? And if so, how do we go about doing that? Well, you don't have to listen to James Corbett's ramblings on this subject. You can listen to the technical expertise of someone who knows a thing or two about this and has made it something of his life's mission to teach other people about internet privacy in general, and obviously as a subsection of that, how to get rid of Google from your life, or at least downplay its significance in your life. And I'm talking about the internet privacy guy, aka Rob Braxman at Rob Braxman Tech. He's available at brax.me, and that link will be in the show notes. But I hope he will already be familiar to my listeners because, well, at least my attentive subscribers will know that I have referenced his videos in my subscriber newsletter several times now, including his most recent offering as we record this, Android without Google. How is that possible? A very interesting and to the point 25-minute video exploration of that very question, which is obviously relevant to today's conversation. Let's bring him on board. Rob Braxman, thank you so much for joining us today.
okay, now before we get too carried away here, I wanted to bring it to your attention that I use a VPN. Right now, I'm connected to Ontario, so all my internet's going to Ontario. My son, who has a master's degree in computer science, recommended that I get a VPN, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. And he suggested that he suggested this one. It's called what is it called? Anyways, I'll tell you later when I have it in my presentation. But so all they wanted was an email address, and I pay them with Litecoin, so it's completely anonymous. And I can surf from anywhere on the planet. I can surf from here. I'll show you. Oh, it's now I'm surfing from the east.
How about my statement in Siberia?
Here we go. Canada, Bahamas, Mexico, Czech Republic, France, Albania, Germany, Isle of Man, UK, Poland, Russia. Where's Russia? I know it's here. Turkey, Egypt, Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam. I know you can surf from Russia or China even. They're probably in alphabetical order. look at that, they're not in alphabetical order. That's kind of weird. Anyways, and Russia used to be there. Maybe I just wasn't looking. But anyway, so the point is it costs like about maybe, I buy it a year at a time, and it costs like maybe $5 a month or something like that. And so it's not that expensive. And the way it works is that in order for, if anybody wanted to find out anything about my surfing habits, they would have to go to a foreign country and subpoena, and they don't keep any records. And so, whoops, damn.
So are they saying it's critical to be outside the borders of the United
Well,
States?
it puts you into international law. Damn. Okay. It puts you into international law. So now I'm going to have to go and find that video. Okay, so I probably trashed it, so I'll have to go to my trash. Because I went and changed. There we go.
Thank you for having me, James.
All right, let's get into this knotted, tangled web of how do we extract ourselves from Google's web that they have placed over us. And that's such a hard question in so many ways because obviously, as you know, their tentacles are pretty deeply embedded in a lot of the infrastructure of even the hardware we're using, let alone the software. But before we get into that, I know this is Solutions Watch, so I'm sure everyone here is already here because they already understand the problem. But just for any normies who might have strayed into this conversation, or people who still might not realize just how pervasive and insidious Google's web over our lives is, can you explain to someone, just in a minute or two, what would you say as to the reasons why we should be concerned about, if not completely de-Googling, at least reducing Google's footprint on our data and activities?
I have a video that actually goes through the problem of how it ends up later into manipulation, how we can be manipulated by our own data. And it's very, very hard to explain that. And to be honest, even on my videos, a lot of people don't watch that part. They talk about Google in general, and they kind of know there's a problem, but they don't really pay attention to what I'm telling them about some of the things that I hope people will check out on my videos about things like Jigsaw, and the one I mentioned recently was Moonshot CVE, where they actually manipulate the search engine, manipulate what you see in the results based on how you're classified into what is called federated learning of cohorts. So you're being grouped, and once they group you into this many, many subgroups, probably thousands of subgroups, they actually label you and attack you by changing the internet on you. Now, I don't know, to some people that's like, well, I don't care. Somebody changes my internet, and I say, well, I guess you're allowing somebody to vote for you if you want to go back to, to how deep this is. But, just to pull back, the main problem is is data collection, and data collection starts out in a big way from the phone. It used to be from the search engine, from what you do on the internet.
And this is an important point because Snowden, if you watch some of Snowden's videos, Snowden talks about it, that the government is prohibited from collecting and storing certain data about you. But there's actually a Supreme Court case that says that corporations don't have the same restrictions. And so what the government is doing now, CIA and those, that's why they set up Facebook, YouTube, because they want to collect that information, and that's information that winds up going to the NSA. So they're collecting the information, and they're going to use it against you if necessary. You see what I'm saying?
They do it through a private entity, and then they go get it there.
That's right.
They get around the law.
They get around the law. That's right. The unreasonable search and seizure stuff. You see what I'm saying? And if you understand the law, all corporations are agents of the government, so really they should be held to,
Yeah.
but they're not. And there's a Supreme Court case, Snowden talks about it, and about how they can circumvent that stuff. Is it okay if I close that door?
Sure.
Because I'm kind of cold.
That's why I put my coat on. So
Okay.
I thought it was
Anyways.
All right.
I noticed you had the window open there, and so I was wondering if you wanted a draft coming through or something. So, anyways, yeah, that's why they set up Facebook and all this stuff, and they're collecting the data, and it's all getting turned over to the government. And worse yet, who knows what these corporations are doing with it? People say I have nothing to hide. Well, it's not whether you have anything to hide or not. They're using it against you.
Right, they'll manipulate any information to convict us in their world.
Right. Security clearances, make it so you can't get a job.
Create a narrative.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's such thing as privacy. If no one has anything to hide, then why do we wear clothes?
Yeah, really.
Privacy. You know?
Yeah, why do you lock the door?
Yeah.
Why don't you just let anybody come into your house? Anyways, yeah.
Internet, cookies, trackers, all this stuff that I used to talk about a lot. But I found out now that probably 80% of the collection of data now occurs on the phone. So that's why the Googling issue is really about the Android. That's really what it's about.
Now, just to follow up on what you just brought up there, I think it is important for people to understand that this is not just, we're talking today about the brass tacks of the data collection that's going on, but the bigger picture, the bigger reason why this is so unsettling, as you point out, are the jigsaws and the moonshots and other things that people don't really know are happening. But when you start to connect those pieces, it forms a much weirder and crazier picture than most people would ever think about. I'll just direct people to the previous work I've done on the sentient world simulation that was being put together by DARPA a decade and a half ago. Who knows where it is at this point, where they literally wanted to have a virtual double of every human being on the planet that they could run in their little simulations to simulate various world events and how people would react. Imagine how much more useful that would be if they had granular detail of all of your data activities over the past decade or 2 or 3 to construct that virtual avatar of you. And if you want more specifically about how Google is involved in that, I will direct people to something called the Selfish Ledger, which was an internal video that Google had that was released or leaked several years ago that shows the incredibly creepy level to which they want to take this in terms of constructing, not just constructing data profiles on people, but using that to manipulate people in certain directions, which they state openly in this internal video. It's incredible. But that to the side, again, this is about Solutions Watch, and you raise the question of de-Googling your phone, which has...
And that's another good example. These elections, you know, how they control what you search, what you find, so they can control the elections. I mean, that's another good example. Anyways.
You say 80% or so of your data trail towards Google, and these days is going to be on your phone, because most people have an Android phone, which Android is an open source project, right? So it's not directly related to Google. How is Google getting your data if you have an Android phone?
You know, that's really so funny, and I gave the history in my last video. And what is really interesting is that when Google started this, they wanted the platform to develop quickly, so they actually came up with the Android open source project, and that was then done in conjunction with their partners, which was from the Open Handset Alliance. So those original equipment manufacturers like Lenovo and HP, Lenovo was not there yet. They came in later. But Motorola and HP and, you know, all of the LG, Samsung, all of them became part of this Open Handset Alliance, and they were competing with the iPhone, which just came out about the same time that they were doing this. And they wanted to come up with something fast, and what is the fastest way to do this is to have the other people build the hardware and build this software drivers for all the hardware, and then Google just developed the actual interface. which they bought from another company, and then which is also originally named Android. So the original project was actually completely open source. Now, what happens is when you get your Android phone, sent or purchased at retail, what they do is the OEM attaches the original Android open source, which is completely open, with their own files called OEM files. So the software drivers that they pay for when they put in a Wi-Fi adapter, a modem, a Bluetooth, and then to that, by contract, they then add the Google stuff. And the Google stuff overrides the files in AOSP. Now, why do they do that? AOSP is compatible with the Google file. So any file that Google puts in, let's say camera. So the original camera program on AOSP works, and the OEM is able to test the camera and make sure that works. So now they certify, yep, camera works. So now Google then can say, okay, now that works, we also have tested that our camera is compatible with that original AOSP camera. So even though it was originally open source, the phone you actually get is not open source. The open source is really primarily for testing. So the reality is, when you actually get your phone, it's all the spyware and all that was not revealed in the open source, and that is what actually gets on your phone. And this is the problem, because for one, it's not open source, and second, you cannot remove it because the original's not there anymore. It was replaced. So all the spyware that is part of the phone is there. And the problem with a phone is that the spyware is in several areas, and I have so many videos talking about this. One is the location tracking. Every Google phone can track you 24/7. 24/7. And they say, well, that's not true. There's permissions and all that. That's a bunch of BS. Telling you right now, it's a bunch of BS. They actually collect, it's called Wi-Fi scanning. They collect all of the routers around your Wi-Fi routers, and they take the locations and then match it to your GPS location, and they store that as a way to do something called Wi-Fi triangulation. They actually have a map of every router in the entire world. And all they have to do is find out what router you're near to. They don't even need to track you directly. They just say what router you're near to. This collection of data is called Wi-Fi scanning. It's tied to your phone with your Google ID, so then they know from your Google ID that your phone extracted the Wi-Fi scan of where the Wi-Fi's are, and therefore they know your location. And they're going to say, well, that's not tied to your identity. That's, seriously, they have your Google ID, they have the GPS, and they have the routers near you. And they say, well, we didn't collect that data. Yeah, right. So that's number one, is the location scanning. And then now Bluetooth is now doing the what do you call this?
Contact tracing.
Contact tracing. The contact tracing is now built into Bluetooth, and Apple did the same thing. And that code is not in the original AOSP. They take the Bluetooth code, replaced it with their code, so that they can now do the contact tracing stuff on there. And they can even do contact tracing even without the Bluetooth, because they already have your location anyway. They can just do what is called geofencing and say who is in an area, who's 6 feet apart. They can tell that because it's accurate to 6 feet. That's the accuracy of the Wi-Fi location. On top of that, the apps have telemetry. The telemetry is built into something called Firebase. Notifications, how your apps are used. For example, if you have an iPhone, it tells you how many minutes you used each app and all that. That's exactly what Google has. So it knows exactly how many times you've used the app, what you do on the app, and that's called telemetry. The telemetry is a big part of what Android does. And the final biggest thing that is revealed on Android is called the device fingerprint. So tied to your Google ID, they know everything that your device has. They know the ID using some identifiers on your phone that are unique to the phone. For example, the IMEI, the International, what is that again? Equipment identifier, the International Mobile Equipment Identifier, IMEI, and the MAC addresses of the Wi-Fi routers, and all of that are unique to your device. So if they are able to read that, which they can because they replaced the code so they can read it, and they send it with your Google ID, anything you do on the internet, they can say, oh, it's this guy. And now you can see how it doesn't matter what app you use, they can connect everything because they can recognize the device. So those are the biggest dangers of a Google phone.
Is it possible to de-Google then? Can you actually get rid of that and still use the phone?
Yes. Now, it's not perfection, obviously, but yes. And I myself use a de-Google phone, and it worked very well for me, and I made some sacrifices for it, and it's fine. Now, how you do a de-Google phone is very simple. The original Android open source project is compatible with the OEM files that the OEM makes, and if you stop there without putting Google files, you have a running Android phone. Now, it's not exactly like the Android that you get from Google. It's not. There's some minor things. The camera might not have all the little tweaks that they used to have. So it's certain apps are more basic, but everything runs, and for the most part, it's tested to work. And even without Google, it will work. I mean, the main phone functions work, and all of that works.
But generally, only for phones that are a year or so old, right?
These are the limitations. The limitations are the phone has to be worked on by somebody who has the phone. A developer has to get the phone. So they can't even start work on it until they buy the phone. So you give them a few months to buy one. Obviously, they have to afford one. They can't buy one every year. So some developer goes and says, okay, I want a new Pixel 4. So they get a Pixel 4. Then they start working on it, and they start saying, okay, now I'm going to do AOSP, Android Open Source Project, put in the OEM files, and test it, and tweak it, and see if it works. By the time that they get done with that, it's typically a year later from the time the phone is released. So for example, right now we sell the Google Pixel 4 phone. That's the latest phone we can sell. So we don't do Pixel 4a or Pixel 5. So it's going to be about a year or so behind, or 10 months at the earliest. And you can't have a new model. That's one of the limitations. But to be honest with you, I don't care. It's, what's the real difference aside from their marketing? What's the real difference between a Pixel 4 and a Pixel 5? The camera's better. Yeah, right. The reality is, if you actually think about it, Pixel 5 has 5G, and 5G is one of the biggest evils that's going to come to you. So 5G, one of the differences between 5G and 4G is that 5G can pinpoint your location within inches. So now the surveillance economy will now go from being able to surveil you from the carrier. From the carrier side is within a quarter mile, half a mile square. Google can surveil you within a few feet, and now we're going to empower the carriers to track you within inches. So not too fond of that. I'm okay with a 1-year-old phone.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like much of a sacrifice when you put it into perspective. And for people who have never downloaded an app through anything other than the Google Play Store, how would you go about getting your apps for your de-Googled phone?
So fortunately, the way that Android works, you can actually load any app from anywhere. I mean, it doesn't even have to come from Google at all. Any developer can make an app, and it's in the format of an APK file. That's what the file looks like. It has an APK extension. There are actually apps everywhere on the internet. In fact, every app ever made that's been placed in the Google Store is actually on apkpure.com. So in theory, if you have a de-Googled phone and you say, well, I want to download an app, but I don't want to use Google Play, you can go to apkpure.com and find the app, or any version of it, even in the past, because they keep it, and you can install it. That's where I found an old version of Waze that works on a Google phone, because Waze is one of the ones that no longer work if you use the new version. But if you use an older version and upgrade it, it works. And that's one of the tricks we found by going to APK Pure. But the basic app stores on the Google phone is basically F-Droid. So F-Droid is the best supplier of apps because it's not Google, no connection with Google whatsoever. In fact, the apps on F-Droid are not on Google Play. And they have been vetted, they have been curated, and they actually are compiled, built. I'm trying to find the technical term here. The F-Droid people actually take the source code and build their own code for whatever the program is. So they have access to the source code. So you can't spy on anyone because the F-Droid people can look at the source code. They don't take any program that they don't have source code for, that they don't build themselves. So the developer never builds anything. They just hand the source code over and F-Droid builds it. So F-Droid is the safest one. So when we install the Google phone, 90% of the phone, 99% of the apps we install, actually only one app, two apps are not from us, from F-Droid, and that is My App Racks Me and Signal. Because those are not on F-Droid, but everything else we get from F-Droid. Now, what about those people who want to use standard apps from the Google Play Store? For that, there's a trick. The trick is we load something called the Aurora Play Store client, which is a fake Google. It actually connects to Google, but it's fake. It basically logs into Google as anonymous and talks to Google, downloads the file, brings it to you. It's like Google doesn't know who took it. So from there, you can get apps like Spotify and Kindle and things like that, even Waze. The only app you cannot install would be anything Google. Nothing Google can be installed. You cannot install YouTube, which I'm sure James doesn't mind. Can't install anything. Can't do Google Search. Can't do Google Drive. Can't do Google Voice. Can't do
Google Maps.
A lot. Actually, you can't even do Google Assistant. That's not on the phone. So with that, you will find that actually 90% of the functionality of the phone works. I'm a boater, I'm a sailor, and for me, I like navigation apps for boating and wind prediction, location, and all that. And I got Predict Wind and the navigation apps for boat, and they all work. They use the GPS. Everything works fine.
All right, let's talk about other aspects of de-Googling, because of course there's so many services online that are going through Google at this point, and obviously the number one, the one that started it all, is search. And so of course it's always the question, what do you use for search if you're not using Google?
When I do the Google phone, because that's a service we provide, we install DuckDuckGo as the default browser and the default search engine. And you can actually install a browser and actually run Google search if you want. And it just won't be Chrome. You cannot install Chrome. You can install Chromium, but you cannot install Chrome. So you don't actually lose everything. I mean, if you want to do something Google, it's still possible to go to YouTube from a browser, just not the app. But it's a little bit different, James. A little bit different. Just because you can go to Google using YouTube or any functionality from a browser, the device fingerprint is not available to the browser, so they don't actually know who's using the phone. That is one of the biggest benefits of a Google phone. Is the biggest one probably is that the device fingerprint disappears. So there is no way for Google to actually pinpoint and say James was going to YouTube, even though he's not supposed to be on YouTube. He's on YouTube and he's doing this and watching these kinds of videos. They don't know that, and that's what I love about it. I just love it.
How about email? Obviously, a lot of people use Gmail as their webmail, and there's a lot to be said about email and the lack of privacy inherent in email. But if you were going to use a webmail service, not Gmail, is there one that you would recommend?
Well, obviously you can use the browser with any webmail, but I actually use Gmail on my phone, my Google phone. That's not a problem. But I use a junk one, not anything important. I have I have a lot of Gmail accounts, and a lot of them are used for one-time use and things that don't have any identity or data. And I use them for logging into social media, and I have one of those on my phone. So that's a Gmail thing. And the app I use is a standard an email client called K9. which is from the F-Droid store. And so I install that, and you can run Outlook and Yahoo and all that. Plus I have my own personal server for my email. I can run that too. I tend not to put a lot of email on the phone, but I would probably not put a real name email on my phone. I probably would not recommend that, because then it's revealing your identity. So I would use something that doesn't have your real name. You can use email, and it works. If you're going to use Gmail, make sure it's not jamescorbett@gmail.com. Use, the guy at gmail.com. Violent far-right extremist at gmail.com.
Yeah,
That's
just
how they
to
track me.
have fun with some of their algorithms and things that they're working on. All right, I will throw in a list. RestorePrivacy.com, for example, runs an alternatives to Google products for 2021 list, and you can go through their various recommendations, et cetera, if you are interested. YouTube alternatives, calendar alternatives, Google Drive alternatives, etc. At least giving some people some ideas for things that they can do. But how will I ever live without Google? In fact, there are a lot of different services out there, and Google becomes stronger every time we go, but Gmail's so easy, we might as well just use it. I think Google gets a little bit extra power every time we do that, instead of going the extra distance to try to find a Google alternative. Now, again, the bigger question of all of this is, well, where are you running to, and will there be privacy involved in that? So on that note, let's talk about your own solutions that you've developed at Brax.me. What is it that you're attempting to do there, and what can people find there?
Well, Brax.me is my social media site that's actually made to do one thing that I think no other website does, and that is to obscure your identity. Brax.me doesn't collect identity data. Brax.me doesn't even require you to have email or require you to have 2FA, two-factor authentication, or anything. It does offer that. It offers it through something called Authy or Google Authenticator, that kind of thing. But it doesn't require you to do it. You don't have to. You can make up your own name. Nobody requires you to have a real name, even though James signed up on there with James Corbett. So we know who you are. But you don't have to. You can come up with your own name, and there's several there with some interesting names like past presidents, and I don't know if they're actually there or not. I'm sure they're not, but you can set up any name. The point is, many people think that the solution to privacy is to do encryption. And one of the things this is one of the reasons I push the Google phones. It's not because of encryption, and this is what Brax.me, my site, does as well. I teach this on my channel, that the main issue is really identity. You can actually trick Google. Google is not that powerful if you take away your identity, because the data that they collect becomes meaningless. So it's really, my whole channel is about obscuring identity. If you can do that, then you actually win. I'm not sure that YouTube will win if they can't find your identity. So that is actually the big picture for me.
It's a very important point. It raises the question, is that really possible? Do you really think it is possible to completely obscure your identity online?
Well, not connected to this topic, but one of the things that I recommend highly is to actually use your connection to Google to feed them information the way you want them to see you. So I teach this where I set up a logged in Chrome account with Google on it, YouTube, my own YouTube channel, and then I show them what I like to watch on YouTube, or I show them what I like to do on CNN or whatever. I basically have formatted my Chrome to be the model citizen that Google wants. Then when I want to do something different, I go to a different browser. And that is called browser isolation. And on every browser, I never, ever log into Google. By doing that, then Google will spend information that I want, and they will actually lose. And this is the important point. If all of us understand that identity screws up their data, then they actually lose. And that is why the Google phone is about that. The Google phone has no identity. They can't collect data.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's such an important point, and one that I made recently on Solutions Watch, talking about salting your data. Yeah, you should feed them information that isn't true and correct. You should feed them information that will steer them in bum directions so that they can't use this data against you. An important point, and browser isolation. There's so many different topics that you've talked about on in your many videos. I'm sure people will have a fun time if they haven't yet discovered your channel, going through your channel and looking at all of the data and information you've got there about not just de-Googling, but how to increase privacy in general. Finally, then, on today's topic, let's talk about the de-Googled phone that you sell. How can people get that, and what kind of phone can they get, and what are the details there?
Well, you can, of course, de-Google your own phone if you have technical skills. You go to lineageos.org, that's the name of the website, and you can go find a phone that they support, and you can test it and see if you can do it. The problem is it is quite difficult. With the instructions on there, the chances of you being successful are probably 10%, and it will take you many failures, and likely you will brick the phone. So in order to save that, because I know it's difficult, so I offer the service, and we de-Google phones ourselves, and we found out which phones are difficult to de-Google and which ones we can offer. And so nowadays we sell those on my app on Brax.me. So if you go to Brax.me, sign in, you can actually see it on the store in there. Now the phones we sell are the most popular ones are the Pixel phones. So we have Pixel 3, Pixel 4, Pixel 3 XL, Pixel 4 XL in various sizes, and then we sell Motorola's. And then we sell OnePlus. Those are probably the most popular that actually are problem-free. There's a few we tried before, and they're really hard to do, and so it just gets more stress. And for example, people always tell me, can I de-Google a Samsung? And this is just one of the difficulties. No Samsung phone made in the U.S. or made for the U.S. market can be de-Googled. You have to only get a subset of international phones. And most people don't know this, so they say, oh, they don't read the instructions, and it says in there, we only support this specific submodels. So no, we don't do Samsungs. So we've stuck to even Pixels. Now here's just a little factoid. Not every Pixel can be de-Googled. And this is again why people come to us for the service, because it's very difficult, because only the Pixels that came from the Google Play Store, this is the funny part, only the ones from the Google Play Store, not Google Play Store, Google Store can be de-Googled. If you buy it from the carrier locks it. So if you buy it from Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, you're not going to be able to do anything to your Google Pixel. But if you bought it from a Google store, it's okay, which is really strange, because why would Google allow that? But it does work.
Very strange. All right, well, it's good to know those kinds of things, that again, if you're just dipping your toe into these waters, you're probably not going to know that. It does take some technical skills. So as I say, you've got a lot of videos talking about these types of subjects on your channel. You've got Brax.me. People can find more information. We will direct people there. But hopefully this won't be the last conversation that we have. There's a lot of other things to talk about in the realm of tech privacy, from VPNs to instant messaging to cloud storage, all sorts of different things that people use increasingly on a daily basis that they may not even know some of the privacy dangers that they're exposing themselves to. So we'll leave today's conversation on this note. Is there anything else you'd like to say just on the general subject of de-Googling?
Well, on the general subject of your channel and my channel, obviously there's a lot of intersections between what we do and what we talk about, and I just love being here. And of course, I've been an avid watcher of your videos as well. So thank you for having me, James.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise. I hope people will check out Brax.me and your channel as well if they haven't yet. Hopefully on Library Odyssey, not on YouTube, but at any rate, you are there as well, and many other places besides. I'll put the links there in the show notes for people who are interested, and I hope we can talk again in the future. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So that's interesting. James Corbett is kind of like one of us almost.
But the
He's
Biden
definitely
administration has been busy
a libertarian.
last Fridays.
Libertarian-minded guy. He lives in Japan. Got lots of interesting stuff. Anyways, we can start on my presentation. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through some presentations today and tomorrow in preparation for, I want to talk about bar grievances, and I've got some there that I've done, and so we're going to talk about some of the things that the bar members like to do, and I've got a presentation on District of Columbia courts, and then this one on disinformation and confusion, talking about some of the disinformation that's out there, and why, with this one in particular, I talk about like the birth certificate and all that, and if we, the birth certificate's found under international law. There's an actual international document, the Hague Convention 4, where that puts the birth certificate under international law. And if we go into that, then, and we'll talk about it, there's no such thing as a sovereign under international law. When you're talking private international law, it's, when you go in there, then you're treated like anybody else, and you give up your sovereignty, basically. And so there's a lot of people that are getting birth certificates authenticated and all that stuff, and if you read those authentications, from the U.S. Secretary of State, it'll say that we don't recognize the underlying document, but we're certifying that the Secretary of State or the certifier of the document, it could be a notary public, you know what I mean? They certify the notary. That's all they do when they authenticate it, and so it'll say every one that I saw, they would say that we don't recognize the underlying document because they know it's a fraud, and so if you do that, then then doing it is one thing. In other words, if you don't introduce it as evidence, then you're still okay, because you have to, if you want to use it somewhere, you have to introduce it as evidence. Once you introduce it as evidence, then you put yourself, that's the reason I do what I do, is because it's a fraud. That's what I say, is it's a fraud, it's a nullity, it's your Roman cult Sestake trust, it's not mine, I want nothing to do with it. Now, I've heard of principles under international law where this account or whatever is out there and you can actually seize control of it. Maybe you can, I don't know. But again, if you're dealing with Federal Reserve notes, you're putting yourself in international law. That's all negotiable instrument law. So, what we're going to talk about is the fact that there's no courts. There are no courts out there. They're fake courts is what they are. They're District of Columbia courts, yes.
International law, would we equate that with commerce?
Yeah.
Contracts?
Right. Private international law.
Admiralty?
Right.
The law
Yeah.
of the sea.
Right. Yeah, basically,
But
yeah.
it has to be the same all over the world, so
Right.
that would be admiralty or international law.
Right. Well, it's private international
Contracts.
law.
Okay.
There's public international law and private international law. The Law of Nations talks about public international law, but there's private international law too. The Uniform Commercial Code is private international law. It's the law of contracts between international law, the law of contracts, basically. And so there's a document that's part of private international law. It's all private international law. In other words, it's contracts.
Okay.
And so once you get involved in those contracts, it puts you under Roman law. It's all controlled and run by the Vatican, is where it all goes back to. And it's civil law, Roman law. I mean, it's all very similar, and it's all tied into that. And once you get mixed up in that, I mean, there's a maxim of Roman law that says, "Let he who is willing to be deceived." So they lie, they cheat, they steal. You know what I mean? They're not. Why would you want to get mixed up with thieves? Yes.
When I got my Pennsylvania birth certificate, authenticated by the United States Secretary of State, it refers to the 1789 year, the authority that they're using. I found that interesting. I don't have it on me, but
I'd be interested in seeing that.
yeah, so they're, even if they are a de facto corporation, they do have, in my view, they did have to refer back. This guy right here, that we're authenticating, the power that we're using, the Secretary of State power, goes to 1789.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's court cases that say that under the states are foreign to each other under public international law, but they're not foreign to each other under private international law. So in other words, if they get involved, they can get into contracts, and then they become like you or me, right? Clearfield doctrine. When a state gets mixed up with commercial paper,
It
then
ceases to be.
it loses its sovereignty.
That's
right.
the- that's
Clearfield
the
doctrine.
Clearfield doctrine's key.
Right. Right. So you have to understand that. And probably what we'll do is we'll break for lunch. But I just wanted to mention also this book here that I've got. This is A Theory of Natural Philosophy. Now, if you look in here, one page is English, the other page is Latin.
Can you show it on camera?
The whole book is like that. They're not going to be able to see it online, but this is it here. This is A Theory of Natural Philosophy. This is a book. It's actually public domain now. It's written by a guy by the name of Boscovich, who's a Jesuit back in the 1700s, actually. And it's public domain. That's the reason. You can actually, if you want it, I can email you a copy. Or I think it's too big to email. I probably have to send you a link to a Google Doc so you can download it. But yes?
Could you expand on the difference between public law and private law? I mean, I don't think I have a grasp of that concept.
Private law is contracts.
Okay, and the public law?
Is actual lawful law by the government.
Okay, okay. So at that point, it has to go through a proper, a set process of, it's in our case, the House, the Senate, then goes to the President.
Right.
And he signs it in.
So you have here,
Yeah,
even
that-
Public Law 97-280.
Okay, so that's public law.
Okay.
All right. Well, in a way,
If you go through the statutes at large, you'll find all sorts of private law in there.
well,
And they call it private law.
indirectly, public law is a form of contract as well, as the representatives send those people to the House and the Senate to pass those laws before it finally gets to the President to sign it into law.
Well-
So in a way, it's,
Public law applies to their public.
okay, so, right, well, they're citizens,
Yeah,
or the people that are,
yeah.
who have decided they want to join this society.
That's their public, that's
Right,
right. But
okay.
private law is where, say, an act of Congress will say something like, Joe Blow's widow needs some money, we're gonna give her some money.
Okay, oh, yeah, well, that's wrong, because the people didn't.
That's
really
private
sign.
law.
Okay.
That's private law. Congress can do whatever they want to do. I mean, you'll see stuff that's essentially what that it says. If
They
you
have
read
their-
the private acts of Congress and you look them up, you'll see it may not say something like we're going to give her some money. It may say something like his widow, especially the older ones. You go back in the 1700s and stuff, and they were doing all sorts of stuff for some general's widow or something.
Sounds to me like that parallels the executive orders that the president is doing. They're
Oh,
doing
yeah.
that outside of
Right.
what they're supposed to.
It's-
Because I'm sure
it's-
their public might step up and say, I actually heard a story something compared to something like that. I think it was, what was a frontiersman? Was it Davy Crockett or Daniel Boone? I mean, I'm kind of, I think,
Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett were both frontiersmen.
right, but one of them was elected to office and.
Davy Crockett.
Okay, and he was walking somewhere, and he asked him, "Well, you gonna vote for me again?" He said, "No, I don't think I'm gonna vote for you because you decided to send some of my money to some of these widows." And it was the exact thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
And Davy Crockett had to take a step back a minute and look at what he did. He said, I can't do that anymore because that's not what I was sent there. I wasn't sent. I mean,
Right.
you have to hear the whole story.
Davy Crockett, yeah, and so everybody has a learning process. We all learn in our own time in our own way, and obviously, maybe that was before he learned about some of that stuff. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But yes.
Public law, what, was there a difference between public law pre-1860 and post-1860?
Yeah, I would say so.
1871, like where?
As I would say so. Well,
so
think of it this
have
way.
they changed the definition of public law?
No, they wouldn't. No, it's whether you understand the law or not, and understand who's doing the law.
And whether it applies, does a public law apply at all times to me today?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, unless you think you're one of the U.S. citizens. See, again, you got to think of what happened. So what happened is, and actually, none of the public law really applied to we the people. It only applied to things that were subject to the government, right? I mean, there's that McCullough versus Maryland in 1819, where the Supreme Court said that that something like subjects are something that is subject, that is under government authority, that's created by the government. If the government didn't create it, then, and it said that this is obvious, this is self-evident, this proposition may be pronounced as self-evident.
That was the state bank issue?
You know, I can't remember.
In Maryland, yeah.
I can't remember,
Was
but it was, I just have a site, and it says that things which are created by the government are subject to taxation.
Yeah.
And things that are not created by the government are exempt from taxation.
corporations.
This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. And so, if you're created by the government, then they want their tribute.
The
You know?
public, okay, that question in my mind regarding public law had to do with the United States. I'd like to repose the same question with the sovereign states.
Well, and again, it comes back to the same thing. And that would get a little bit more confusing. That's why I think that all these states have gone territorial, because they're subject to Title IV United States Code. If you read Title IV, it tells the state legislatures how they're going to set up and the whole 9 yards. That's all in Title IV United States Code. And so then you read the state constitutions, and they're all territorial. And even then, even the state constitutions only really applied to things that were created by the state. And even before the Civil War. And so once you understand all of that, but there's ways that you can get mixed up with it, you know. And if you read the Law of Nations, there was people who were subjects of the government and people who were not. People who were the sovereigns, or you'd have to get into the Law of Nations. I can't remember exactly the wording they used, or he used, Vattel. But it was written in the 1750s, so you know that the Founding Fathers were reading that book. But the statutes really only apply to things that are created by the government. You know, it's for government employees, really, and it's their instructions on how to run the government, basically. I mean, if you look in Title V United States Code, Section 552 AA 13, it says that anybody with a Social Security number is quote unquote federal personnel. So I think that's why they've gotten, all the states have gone territorial, where it talks about it, because it's all territorial. And again, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, in the supreme law of the land, says that their territory is 10 miles over there between Virginia and Maryland.
But then too, we also have the enclaves within the states as well.
Yeah, but the enclaves have to be seated by the legislature. There has to be an act of the legislature. And if there's not, and I can tell you that there's not in Texas, and I would question whether there is even in here in New Jersey. It might be. New Jersey's been around longer than Texas, but I can tell you there's not in Texas. There is nothing, no acts of the legislature ceding any territory to the United States. That, and Fort Hood, it's a big military base down there. There's a bunch of military bases in Texas. None of them have been ceded to the federal government.
They're rented, they're probably.
Must be.
It's all done under territorial jurisdiction, kind of above ground.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I think it's that too. You know, all these courts and stuff, it's all territorial. And so then technically they can't impose federal law on anybody in Texas. But again,
Unless you're a U.S. citizen.
unless you're a
You're
U.S.
claiming
citizen,
to be.
they presume you're one of the slaves. And so that's why Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, I use that in a case, and so far it's worked. I haven't got back to Texas to see if there's anything there for me, but I don't think there is.
One way that I understand to see, you know, I don't necessarily know how to trace back to see if it's actually been seeded and so forth by a particular state's legislature. But if you go to the county tax assessor and look up, ask the county tax assessor within your county, if there's any property that is deeded to either the United States of America or the United States of America, that would be the county of the territory that you're speaking of. Because within each one of the counties, there's actually two counties. There's a federal county, and then there's the de jure county. Because like, my best example is always Philadelphia County. You have where Constitution Hall is, that's the federal county of Philadelphia within the original Philadelphia. So in actuality, those legislatures sitting up there in City Hall making all these laws and rules, they actually only apply in Constitution Hall. Yeah, that's a fact of it. Unless you're a U.S. citizen, then they got you anywhere. So that's
Right.
part of the
Right.
that's part of the confusion you have to get past.
Right.
There's actually two Philadelphias. There's two Pennsylvanias. Well, actually, if you get down to it, there's three Pennsylvanias because there's the de jure, which is Pennsylvania state.
Right.
Anytime you hear the word of, it's
That's
not
a
of the
fiction.
original. Yeah, exactly. Because you may be of your mother and your father, but you are not your mother and father.
Right.
Okay, so now getting back to the three of each entity, you have the original geographical territory, which is called Pennsylvania State. Then you have now they call it.
Is that a small s?
Yes, it would be a small s. That's
Okay.
the way we understand it. Okay, I'm trying to break it down where people can understand it simply. Then there's the two de factos. One of them is the actual geographical territory. And it is territory because it is of. That's where I'm referring back to going to the county tax assessor and asking her for everything that's been deeded to United States of America or the United States of America. And to add to that confusion, you also have a corporation that's called a Pennsylvania, well, they call it
Right.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which is a totally artificial entity that's on paper. So
Right.
you've got three of them that you actually got to mentally wade through to get to to try to come to some understanding of
Right.
this.
Well, and so then there could also be all block capital letters and upper and lower
That
case.
gets into the Annabon rights.
I know.
And now
I
that's
know.
even more confusion.
I know.
You're better
I
off
know.
starting off with the three.
I know.
And then expanding from
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I mean, it's
So
layers
it's
of the
a
onion.
can of worms, that's for
Oh,
sure.
man.
So the important thing is just is that's why I like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17,
Right.
because that just defeats it all right there, and all of these acts are actually congressional. Okay, I don't care if the state legislature's enacting it. They're doing it under authority from Congress because they're territorial.
Right.
And so it's all immaterial.
And that all goes back to the ordinance of 1787, the Northwest Territory Ordinance. That is when Congress grabbed the extra power to start doing what they, as far as I'm concerned, they figured that they were going to project this into the future.
It very well could be.
Yeah.
And so, it could be, and so it's hard to say whether King George was sabotaging us or
Yeah.
doing us a favor. He might have been doing us a favor
I doubt
by creating that, because but it's only for those who understand. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I always say that was his Trojan horse.
It could
What I
be.
describe it as.
It could be.
Yeah.
But people don't understand. I think a lot of people don't understand what's going on, and it's all territorial, and that's why you can use Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
Agreed.
Once you understand what's happening, most people are, but the biggest problem, in my opinion, is, and this is one thing I went through yesterday, is prisons and prisoners. That's all coming from the Roman cult. If our government wasn't owned and operated by the Roman cult, then we'd have, it used to be back in the 1930s that when people immigrated here, they were given a choice about whether they wanted to be a state citizen or a
Yep.
U.S. citizen.
Yep.
That's the way it should be.
Mhm.
And now it's a U.S. citizen, you're one of the slaves.
Right.
And so people don't understand what's happening, and so it all comes down to, it used to be there was a difference between a republic and a democracy in the soldiers' training manual. There's all of these little pieces of evidence,
I wasn't
And-
aware of that.
huh?
I wasn't aware of that, but.
Yeah, it said that basically a democracy is always break down on chaos,
Oh,
and a republic is, and so, but under the law of nations, a republic is an aristocracy too. And so, but there's different variations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you can have a republic, and that's where the founding fathers, it was quite ingenious how they set up the Constitution, because we the people of the states, and you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And that's why I think that they've gone to territorial state legislatures and everything.
Well, it's my contention that King George planned this out into the future. This is how they were going to have it all
Might have.
break down to back to us.
Well, I
It's
think
almost an aristocracy.
Cornwallis was one of the big generals in the War of Independence, and he said that in 200 years, you're going to be in a worse situation than you are now.
Yeah, well, it appears that way.
Who knows?
I
Actually,
mean, we were supposed to get rid of the royalty here in this country, but some little elementary school girl did the research and traced all the presidents back to royalty of Europe, except for maybe one, Van Buren.
it's if you think about it, it's hard not to. I mean, I'm probably related to, if you go back, I mean, my ancestor, my middle name is Winningham. That's my mother's maiden name. And that's where I show that I was here prior to the War of Independence, is through my mother, because I was born in Canada. Anyways, there's a family story about a guy in England, in old England, back in the 1600s, that used to get these duels, and he won the duels all the time.
Mm.
And so he had these other people, their families, so you win the duel, you kill the other guy, right?
Right.
And so the families were wanting to get in duels with him. And he didn't want to be getting into these duels all the time, and so he came to America and changed his name to Winningham, from Buckingham, as in Buckingham Palace, where the Queen lives.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's my house, maybe, huh?
Well, my whole point is, I mean, Barack Obama is supposed to be our first black president. You mean to tell me of all the black families in this country,
We couldn't find a black man who was part black that wasn't related to the rest of these criminals.
Well, really, really.
I mean, he's related to Bush and
Yeah.
back to the Queen. I mean, come on. It's a setup, man. It was all a
Well,
big
but
joke.
you start going back, and we're all brothers and sisters, really. You know, we're all part of the human family. And I have ancestors that were named Livingston. Livingston was one of the governors of one of the colonies. I can't remember which one, but there was a Livingston. I'm probably related to him. You know, I mean, you go back. You know, it's like you know, it goes huge. You know, you're probably related to anybody and everybody somehow. You know.
Well, my fifth great grandfather was a Sullivan, and it ends there. We don't know where it goes from there. We don't know who his mother and father were. But then there was a Sullivan who was the second governor of Massachusetts that somebody got all contorted. And then there was a general out of New Hampshire, I think there was a Sullivan that participated. Was it the Revolutionary or I don't know. But so I mean, you know, it all goes back. But still, you know, there's something wrong with these presidents all being so closely related. Like,
yeah, no doubt.
You know,
I mean,
and then that going back to the royalty of Europe, and then the royalty of Europe goes all the way back to the pharaohs of Egypt. It's like the same criminal families
they
been in charge for thousands of years.
They said they tied Trump into all of that, and I don't know. My attitude is that they hated his guts, and I think that, I mean, I like him, if anything, because of the fact they hate his guts so much.
Well, that's true. Well, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that there aren't some good people, there aren't some good, you know, royalty or aristocracy above. I mean, the Romanovs were probably truly cared about the Roman people. That's why they had to go.
You're right.
All taken into the basement and had their brains blown out.
Right.
And Kennedy, he probably was actually trying to do the right thing. You know, he
Right.
wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Right.
You know, he said, no one, if you're a member of a secret society, you cannot participate in the government.
Right.
That was probably the last straw. That's when they blew his brains out.
Yeah,
You know? So,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're not that they're all bad.
Right.
But the good ones don't stay around for too long. The bad
Well,
ones make sure of that.
It's and I'm sure they've tried to kill Trump on more than one occasion.
Well,
I
he
think
does have his own home protection
that
service.
he does.
He didn't
And
trust
I've
the
heard
Secret
that
Service.
there was that Secret Service guy that turned up dead in Scotland, and you know, they don't tell you if there was an attempt on his life or anything
I don't
on
know
Trump.
about that.
But anyways, so you know, I guess we'll see. We're all like a captive audience. Anyways, the reason I brought that book out is because any picture that's ever taken of Tesla, I don't know if you remember Nikola Tesla, he had that book in his hands. And so I would encourage everybody to get a copy of that book. I can send you a link to a uploaded a PDF file where you can download it, and that would be I would encourage everybody. Again, it comes down to freeing ourselves. Tesla actually patented, I think, about 10 or 11 permanent magnet motors, and this was like in 1898, and back then there was the technology, the magnets were really poor, and so Cliff High talks about in his videos about these permanent magnet motors, and he's trying to get one that he wants to have a one that for a generator. Okay, you have a motor and you hook it to a generator, and the motor powers the generator, right? And so then you can have power for your house, basically. So you're not stuck being held ransom to the power companies and all the rest of that stuff. You see what I'm saying? And so that's what Tesla was reading.
And this stuff looks like some dry reading.
It's half of it's Latin and half of it's English,
Well,
and
I
so
mean,
it's I agree. It's interesting. I read the first part of it about Boscovich and his history. He was a Jesuit, and so you know, I guess that means that not all Jesuits are bad. You know, anyways, that guy that you get, what's his name?
Eduardo Rivera.
Eduardo Rivera. I heard he was a Jesuit. He actually left the Jesuit order because he didn't agree with it, I guess, or something. I'm pretty sure. I think I remember reading something about him being a Jesuit.
No, he's a California law professor that came up with the whole thing about the territorial jurisdiction. He's the one that broke apart the organic laws. I don't think he's a Jesuit. I don't believe so.
Well, I think he was. I don't think he is anymore.
Huh.
I think I remember reading something about him being.
You have to ask Sharon about that. She would know because she's an avid she studies his teachings pretty avidly.
Right. Interesting. Anyways, so why don't we take a break for lunch, and we'll come back at what time is it now? It's 12:30. Say about 2 o'clock.